Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I am your host, Mike Malatesta. On this podcast, I dig in deep with every guest to get to the roots of their success, to discover not just how it happened, but why it matters. My mission is to expose the ideas and clues you need to inspire, activate, and maximize the greatness in you. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the How Did It Happen podcast. So happy to have you here. And I am fulfilling my promise to you today with another amazing success story. I've got Eric Berman on the show today. Eric, thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, thank you so much for having me today.
So let me get you excited about Eric before we get started here. Eric Berman is currently the founder and CEO of Brandetize, a full-service performance-based digital marketing agency helping experts build their empires. That's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to him, because I'm an expert that wants to build an empire.
Yeah.
You like it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's worked with clients like, very famous clients like Brian Tracy, Jack Canfield, Vistage International, which has probably a ton of people wrapped underneath that. And the list goes on and on. Additionally, Eric has a passion for networking, relationship building, and investing. He has served as a mastermind host and consulted for venture capitalists and successful companies at all levels like Club Med, Vessel Health, Fenix Space, FanDuel, which really got my attention, and more. When he's not busy helping other entrepreneurs and companies find growth and success, you can find him where he should be, spending time with his family and watching the horses run at the racetrack. I'm not sure is it your horses or is it the horses?
Part of a syndicate I'm in, the horse syndicate. Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Well, that's another good thing to dig into. I haven't spoken with someone who's been in a horse syndicate before, so that's cool. So, Eric's contact information. He's got his own website, of course, with his name, Eric, which is ERIC, Berman, BERMAN.com. Let's see. I don't know. On the other socials, it goes Eric Berman, his name. Sometimes it's Eric B. Berman on Instagram. And
of course, the company. The company.
And of course, the company, Brandetize, BRANDETIZE.com. And we'll go over more of those at the end, so you'll get that again. Eric, let's get started here. As you know, I start every show with the same simple question, and that is, how did it happen for you?
Yeah, well, interesting question, and thanks again for having me. It was interesting. Look, my career starts. I graduated at UC San Diego, and when I was a 21-year-old kid out of UCSD, full of inspiration and ready to run through walls, not really knowing what I wanted to be when I grew up. I found myself not moving towards the direction of a lot of my colleagues, which was, hey, it's the career fair at campus. Why don't you come work for some financial firm and get paid X and blah, blah, blah. I just wasn't feeling it. I went on a little trip to Europe, came back, and what did appeal to me was a buddy said, hey, we got this cool little thing that we're starting up. This guy, you got to meet him. He's doing this thing in the college market and he's been successful. And I went and met with him, and he was telling me his vision, and I immediately got attracted to this vision of this idea of building this technology to aggregate the college market. The whole premise was the company that owns the eyeballs of the college market ultimately wins the big prize because it's the most coveted industry for advertisers. And after that, maybe an hour meeting of sitting down and hearing the vision, I was so inspired about just starting something. I said, great, where's my seat? Where can I get started? Before that, he goes, it's a startup and we don't really have a lot of money, so I can't really pay you anything right now. But if you want to help do something cool and build something great, love to have you. I said, great, where do I sit? And that led to, in hindsight, me being an entrepreneur, not really understanding what it meant to be an entrepreneur, willing to risk a lot of time and sweat equity, if you will, for a bigger prize. And funny enough, I was attracted to doing a startup and building something cool, making no money, versus going out there, making a job and maybe getting paid $50,000, $60,000 back in the day out of college. fast forward, I'll spare you all the crazy details of that, but fast forward and 18 months later, I finally received my first paycheck. And that was a very interesting time, having conversations with my parents and family who were like, what the hell are you doing? We just, helped subsidize some of your costs for college at an amazing campus. And you're now like, why are you not getting paid and what's going on? And I remember to this day, that really difficult conversation was Mom, I go, the education I'm getting right now, I'll be able to go get any job I want for way farther money than I would have received working at these things. And I'm having a blast. I always know I could go back into the market and go get a job, but this is fun. So that led to, let's call it 5 more years of us going from 3 people to 400 people, and us having raised close to $100 million in what was ultimately the first social media company, the first Facebook of Facebook's, called collegeclub.com. And clearly we didn't know we were building the first Facebook or anything like that, but we were dead on and we were doing all of the right things. And to give you some context, we were the #1 ranked website for the college demographic. And we were the number 40th site on the entire internet back in year 2000. That's how big we got. And we started acquiring companies left and right. And really how it happened for me, my career was just being in there, figuring stuff out. I wore so many hats, from running marketing to biz dev to sales to investor relations to corporate development to ultimately, we filed to go public and I was the GM on the S1 filing. And it was such an incredible journey. The first 6-7 years learning how to run companies and build stuff. And I would never have gotten that education anywhere else. So learning about building culture, teams, et cetera. And then of course I learned about going from what you think you'd be invincible to a massive downfall. And that occurred when we had our first vacation in 5 years, celebrating the fact that we just filed our S1 filing and we were 2 months from going public. And I was be retired at 27 if I wanted to be retired. Mm-hmm. To that big stock market crash of April 2000, where we went from thinking everything is going to be great into, holy smokes, we have this $10 million bridge loan to take us public that was supposed to be hitting our bank accounts the Tuesday after our vacation. All of a sudden went away and there was no money to be had. And we went from, basically covered our pants down in that timing. To having lost everything. Ultimately, selling the company for peanuts through a bankruptcy and learning all that information, and even trying to acquire our own company out of the bankruptcy. And just having that experience was insanely fortunate. Even though I didn't necessarily get the big upside reward, I like to share and tell people that it's a lot easier to lose paper money that you never had in the first place, because I never really had any money, versus actually, having, tens of millions of dollars that somebody actually pulled off of your bank account, because you can't take that experience and learnings I got away. And I had to sort of walk away with that attitude. That was really the first phase of my career. And I'll pause for a second because I just threw a lot at you.
Well, as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, okay, so your parents, were questioning you, and what you were really doing was getting your MBA and then your doctorate in
That's right.
business, right?
That's right.
So at that time, were a lot of people that were graduating when you graduated, were they willing to take those kinds of risks, or were they willing to make that kind of, I'll call it an investment in a startup like this? Or was that something really real different path for someone to take?
I mean, I think at the time, I would say, most people wouldn't take that risk. Most people are out there and, hey, I'm working here, I'm working there, and what are you doing? And yet, what was interesting is I feel like almost everybody was more inspired by what I was doing. Like, wow, good for you, go for it. That's cool. I mean, I'd saved up. Somehow I look back and I don't know how the hell I did this, but I saved up enough money to be able to live off of a whopping $1,200 a month. Rents were not what they were back then, and eating a lot of ramen and pizza, and doing a lot of. But in those days, it was a lot of. 15, 16-hour days in the office. We'd order dinner for everybody in the office, that kind of thing. So I just living real cheap and making it happen.
So there's probably no one listening, or maybe very few people listening, who've had anything close to, that kind of experience. starting, when as employee number 3 or 4 or whatever you were, not taking a check, betting on the future appearing to come true, where you get this massive growth, massive funding, just about to go IPO. And yeah, so for people who can't even fathom that, I mean, can you talk to me about just how you felt along the way? Was it always like, this is awesome? Or was it like, what the, sometimes, what was it like?
Well, I mean, during the journey, it was like, going back to, first of all, there was like, we were close to missing payroll probably 15, 20 times along the way. In fact, one time we did miss payroll, and then you had to have the conversation. And, there's just so many different stories I could tell you within that 7 years. How do you get through that time and go through that? But I mean, I think part of it was just, it was almost like you're just building this game. It's just this game we were playing. Like, we're going to win this war. It was a battle. And I also was naive enough and young enough to not know what I didn't know. And literally, like, I didn't really have much of a social life outside of, my years 21 to 27. It was like, oh, wait, doesn't everybody just work like 7 days a week? I'm young and hungry. Let's just is all I know. But I think it was always because when you had a mission and a vision, and you really felt like you were changing lives and doing things that are affecting, affecting others, not just yourself, but others, and you're really making a difference in the world by building something that cool, it kept you going. And, that's what enabled us to work like crazy hours. And you were going to make this thing happen. And of course the reward would come, and you were on the verge, and you were this close. And then when you get the validation from investors, and obviously you get a lot of validations along the way, it just keeps you so fired up and inspired. Of course, having lost everything, I mean, that was certainly a, devastating time, going through what you thought we were there to wait a second. I thought, as Brian Tracy teaches, the law of sowing and reaping, at some point you're going to reap what you sow. I still believe that. I just feel like it's going to come to me soon. So we're grinding. I've had a lot of successes along the way, but I think the big hit, I'm still going to have from all that. And I feel confident in that. But and part of it could have just been, like you said, when would I ever get that experience in my 20s, unless I went back to college and did an MBA. So that was part of, looking back what I gained. So there wasn't a total loss from that standpoint. And all I can do is control the way I react to situations. And, you go through all that, fortunately, funny, we'll talk about Brian Tracy, I'm sure, in a little bit, but he's my, top client I've had for 20 plus years. But I actually met Brian before I met him live. I met him on audio cassette back in the day. I met him and Tony Robbins in a room at 6 a.m. every day by feeding my brain with personal development. And on another side, that's sort of my dream in the future. If I ever give back, it would be, how do you start teaching personal and professional development to people in when they're in middle school, high school, and versus some of the other stuff. I wish they had taught me that. But getting my brain right and setting up my mental state to go through these things it was so important, so that I could recover from something so big like that. Something so devastating.
So I got 3 questions for you. I'll ask them one at a time. So because sometimes I put too many things together and it gets lost.
Yeah.
The first question is, yesterday I was at a YPO event where it was called the War for Talent. And we were talking about how to have a brand for your employees as well as a brand for your business, which you know way more about this than I do. But I'm wondering, in that organization, College Club, I don't know if it was called that all the time, but as you were bringing in all of these people, Eric, what was the mission? What was getting them excited? And I'm assuming it wasn't the like, hey, you'll get rich here eventually. There had to be something more. What brought everybody? What made people want to be a part of it?
Well, I think it was the vision of us connecting, college students and aggregating and building this mega community to help college students, which was such an important. And then eventually we were going to expand from there.
To help them with what? For what purpose?
It was communication and just help them communicate, help them get discounts, help them aggregate their collective their collective power of the college market. It was sort of like giving them services that would make their lives easier, helping the advertisers because they were able to connect and have a relationship with them. And we didn't say it like that. It was more like engaging, the students with a more targeted group of people that could help them. And I don't remember the exact mission statement we had at the time. It's been a while, but the vision of building that out and what really got people excited, and plus they could be part of us building this big thing out that we were doing.
Okay. And thank you. And then you said something when you were talking your way through that. You said, all I can do is control the way I react or something like that. That's very, I guess that's very mature and profound. Is that something that has developed in you over time, or is that something that you remember back to even those days?
Probably a combination of. I think that I believe that now all the time, and I try to teach that and train that where I can. My favorite quote that I live by is at least I got from Brian Tracy is I am responsible. Yeah. And I think about that. I think about that in everything you do. And that also includes you're responsible for the way you respond to situations. And so, I can't really control the outcome. All I can do is learn from what's going on here and try to take that information and move forward. At the end of the day, for better, for worse, the person that cares most about me is going to be myself. Of course, as you get older, you have a wife and a family and all that, and you can make that argument that they do just as well. But at the end of the day, at that time, when I'm 27, 28, people will empathize, but me sulking and crying and being frustrated wasn't necessarily going to get me any farther what I needed to do. And I guess I did learn that from probably some of the personal development and listening to different programs and getting my head on straight and just trying to move forward.
Okay.
Not saying it was easy to go through it, but it was, what else could you do? Right. So,
yeah, I think a lot of people's natural reaction in situations like that is, first off, it's like, who can I blame for this? Instead of looking at yourself and taking responsibility, it's like, whose fault is this? Because it makes me feel better if I can assign the blame to someone else, even though I know where it belongs, which is right here.
Yeah.
Third question is you said, well, it's paper money and all that stuff, but man, oh man, when you're that close, it is probably not feeling like paper money anymore. Right. Yeah. So when that happened, you come back from vacation and the bridge loan's not there. That's a holy crap sort of moment. Right.
It was a scramble. I think I remember, well, first, I think we were so battle wound. We're always like, it was like, okay, it's just another massive obstacle we got to get through. Okay. What does it mean? How are we going to get through this obstacle? This is like, it's so many war scars. And so, okay, well, and then I think that's really where it started getting scary, was when we're like, okay, wait a second. What do you mean we can't? There was always one of our core values was 𝑊𝙠𝙠. It's like WTAW, where there's a will, there's a way. It was one of our core values at the time. And I'll always forget that. And we said, okay, well, we have the will, there's got to be a way out. And we always use that battle cry. And in this case, it was, really, and I'll get a little more specific, and I can share this with the audience, because this is where you learn about the importance of board control. And ultimately, the founder, I should say the main founder, CEO, the main person who started the company, over time, and after going through Series C and multiple rounds of, the last Series C essentially had us lose board control. When I say us, the founding group, the original people. And so all of a sudden turned to 4-3, where this is going. So I feel like, I think me and the other founders, all that, feel like we would have found a way out at some point, even if it meant massive layoffs and getting through the storm, we would have done it. But at that time, we ultimately lost the decision-making process, and the board decided to take their losses and lick their wounds, because this was at a time when the whole world was panicked on what would happen with the first crash. So it was like, okay, we don't care what the founders want. We know their mantra was, founders think they're always going to figure out a way out, and we don't want to trust that. We don't want to risk it. We're just going to try to get out whatever money we can get out. Let's just take this thing through a bankruptcy and take whatever money we can get out, especially the last round of people. Okay. So that's when you learn, like, oh, wow, we actually really don't. In fact, we even went so far we almost were able to buy it out of bankruptcy, the founders. Right. And then we got to a point where the money we found, the person who's going to invest, his wife had a stroke like a week before we were going to go to bankruptcy court with an offer. And at that point, that's when we said, we may have to listen to something else out there that's telling us something. There's a message for us. Like something's telling us it's time to move on with everything we've got. And when you just go down that far down.
So what did you end up listening to? What got your ear?
As far as to move on, I think it was.
Like what?
Yeah, I think when you've exhausted that many possibilities and everything at that point was just, going against us. It was just like, what, maybe there's a signal that says our talents and skills need to be moved somewhere else. And just now's not our time. And at some point it was almost like, okay, what else is there to do at this point? Or is it really worth the continued battle? And maybe let's spend our energy elsewhere and start with a fresh start and not have to deal with a lot of other negatives that we were dealing with at that time.
Yeah. So that's what I meant. Once you made that determination, what was the next thing you heard? What
to do next?
Yeah. What got your, yes, right. What got your attention?
I think just, all of a sudden it was like, oh, wait, we're free to think about new ideas all of a sudden outside of this. What else do we want to do? And all of a sudden I think that got you enthused to say, well, we could just do it again now, and we could start clean, fresh and think of the next big thing. Yes, this battle, maybe we lost this battle, but the war is not over by doing something else. And there's other parts of our career. And that's why it's just constantly trying to keep that positive mental state to say, look, I still have my all the learnings I have, and maybe that didn't work for this one venture. So what's going to be next? And for me personally, that was also very interesting pivotal time in my career because my partner, CEO at the time, he had an idea, and I started kind of collaborating with him again. But also in the back of my mind, I had an idea for something else, which actually happened to be a Club Med related idea. And all of a sudden, I got excited and inspiration, saying, "Well, wait a second, I want to go chase my dreams." And it was also an interesting time for me to learn that the first guy I did work with, he was sort of that mentor, but there was that relationship where he was always the mentor and I was always the next guy in. And at some point, I'm like, if we're going to start something new, I need to start my own thing. I'm ready to be a lead myself and take all my learnings. And so it was an interesting time because it was a 7-8 year relationship with a partner that was such a good mentor along the way. And there's things I loved about him. There's things I didn't necessarily wouldn't do that he would be like. And so I got confidence myself to start the next phase of my career, which is to go out there and do it myself and be my own consultant. And I have a bunch of ideas too. Let me go chase those down. And herein lies the next phase of my journey.
So before we talk about the next phase, I just want to say that, as you were telling that story, I was thinking to myself, I think I would have been in a cave for a little bit after that. Like I gotta recover from this because, to build something so big and so quickly and to get so close to something so meaningful and then, have the board say not agree with you anymore, right? So your idea is not the best idea anymore. Sorry, even though it may have been. I don't know. Yeah. And then I think I would struggle with that for a while. It would take me a while to rebound from that.
Yeah, I think I don't remember how much time. I think there was definitely time away from the grind because it was a different battle at that point. It was the battle of how to buy this thing out of bankruptcy, which was a little bit of a pivot. And after that, I think we got inspiration by brainstorming new ideas, and that gave us a newfound energy. Probably that combined with the fact that I had this, my personal finances to try to figure out. So it wasn't like I wasn't like flush with all this money. I could just go sit around. So I'm like, okay, well, what's next? I got to go make some money here.
Okay. So let's talk about what's next. Or what was next?
Yeah. So what was next is I had an idea for, I can't remember what came first, chicken or egg. I think it was first actually, I started consulting for Brian Tracy. So a friend of mine, and I can't remember which was first, to be honest, this or a Club Med idea I had. Okay. I'm just kind of, I'll share both. Those are at the same time. A family friend of mine was working with Brian and she's like, hey, this internet thing, I know you're good at it. Brian needs help building a website. I'm like, okay, this is 2001. So, I met with Brian and I studied his business, what he was looking at. I knew his business, I say, because I was a huge fan of his forever. And I listened to so many of his audio programs. I came in there and, you sort of, meet the star with my, drool coming in my mouth and eyes wide open, like, oh my God, is this Brian Tracy? I'm like in an office with him. And I came in there probably like, just probably overly hyper, but I said, hey, Brian, blah, blah, blah. I'm a fan. I know what you need. And I said, listen, Brian, and this is something else I'll share that's been really good for me for the years. And this just could have come from my first, from the startup. When you think about the startup, it was, I invested my own sweat equity to get myself an opportunity. And when I went to Brian, I said, Brian, I'm going to help you do this business, but I got to be honest with you. I'm not an employee type. I go, I'm an entrepreneur. So I'll build this for you. And I don't want to make any money until you make money. He's like, what? He's like, you're my kind of guy, Eric. This is great. He's like, okay. So I said, that being said, there's a couple out-of-pocket expenses. I do have to pay some, people like a designer, stuff that I don't have the skills for, but, I'll make sure we keep it cost effective, and I'll make sure that, again, I'm not making any money so I'll keep the cost down because we got to make some profit so I can get a piece of the action. He's like, great, let's do it. So that started what is now a 21 now year plus relationship with Brian. And I was able to, quote, get in with a big whale like that based on the offering to say, let me prove myself. You have no risk by bringing me in. And I obviously had a little bit of credibility because I knew the internet space and it ran a company. So that certainly helped too. And so that was that opportunity with Brian. And then, so I started consulting with him and yeah, you quit on that. And I'll share the other thing too. Yeah.
Yeah. So for people who don't know who Brian Tracy is, could you just let us know who he is?
Yeah. So I mentioned him a few times. Yeah. So Brian Tracy is kind of in the group of people that are considered some of the original, quote, gurus on the personal professional development side. So if you think of the names like Tony Robbins, Stephen Covey, Zig Ziglar, Les Brown, the quote legend, Jim Rohn. Yeah, there you go. So the legends, if you will. This is, back in the day when there's audio cassettes in people's cars and, the sales guys would drive around, and Brian was very proficient in selling. Yeah, exactly. He was big on personal development, goal setting, personal achievement, sales, et cetera, et cetera. So I was listening to him and Tony Robbins start at 21 years old. And really that was a journey from the first few years of my career. And I owe so much to them for helping, get my mind straight, on just doing the right thing. Just a lot of positive things there. Same time working with Brian, I had an idea, and this is the first time I was able to actually take an idea and push forward on it. I had an idea for Club Med, and I saw a big opportunity and a big thing that they were not doing. And it sort of was the first of me having my own set of ideas where I continually kind of throw ideas around, where it's every time I see something that doesn't make sense or a pain point, or I look at it, I'm like, well, why aren't they doing these basic things? I'm like, well, that is an idea for a business. Let me go pursue that. And for them, it had to do more with the fact that they, as a consumer of Club Med, I didn't think they were doing a good job of maintaining relationships with people that had such a good relationship at their villages. They could have done a better job using social media to connect with their loyal travelers, and they were missing a big part of it. And so we pitched them, and ultimately we got a fun gig with Club Med, building something called My Club Med. And that lasted for a while, but I think more for me and my career, it gave me confidence to say, wow, I had an idea, I put it together, I went and pitched it, and I won a big contract with a cool company. I could do this. This is where okay, I've now made it myself by leaving from being the sort of protege, the prodigy of the mentor, or the protege, wrong word, the mentor in the first company, to, having the idea and moving forward on the second one. That's kind of continued to build my confidence off of that.
And that, the Club Med thing, did you see the opportunity there because of your experience as a customer there, or did you?
Yeah, it was a pain point. And I think that's where a lot of these ideas come from. And you always hear that, when you see pain. And for me, the pain point was, I just had an amazing trip. They're taking pictures. I just met people from all around the world. They sort of, Club Med I don't know if you've been have you been to a Club Med? It's kind of old school, but
yeah, maybe, but it would be a long time ago. Yeah.
So part of what they do different than other sort of resorts, this all-inclusive, is if they really go out of their way to ensure that that the people at the resort meets each other. It's very social. You're doing things where it's like every time you sit down for dinner, they're putting you at a different table, and they're engaging you to meet with others. And so you walk away after a week having some great relationships with 10, 12 new people from all around the world, but then it just ends. And I think Club Med, I was like, well, this is terrible. I just did this. They spent all this money bringing me here to try to bring me into their clubs. I go there and it's just like, bye, everybody. Nice meeting you. Maybe I'll talk to you. Maybe I won't. I'm like, okay. Club Med's got such a great opportunity to keep the connection with their they're travelers, and obviously then they can continue to sell more trips to them. So they just weren't doing a good job in my mind from a social media aspect. And this is, I'm really early on in the social media days of understanding how to leverage the social media connection. So I was fresh off of that with our first company. And I'll tell you a funny side story here, just to close the loop on my first company. My brother, who went the route of jumping out of college, 2 years old, jumping out of college and going into that first job in the financial world of Price Cooper's Waterhouse, and hating his job and being inspired by his little brother doing a startup, decided to go his own way and do some of his own startups. And he started a little company called MySpace. So,
no kidding.
So my brother with 3 of his friends started MySpace, and they ended up getting the big hit on the social media side. And now he gets the big brother ends up beating little brother, in this battle. So it's a fun silver rivalry we have there. So that's a whole other story I could tell you, but yeah. So,
yeah. MySpace is still alive and well, right? I know it doesn't, I thought it was like very niche-y now, and it was still, but okay.
Yeah, okay. I think so. And really they got hurt big time when that's a good story in another conversation. Maybe I'll have you have my brother on, but a lot of the, there's a good lesson in there from what happens when culture changes from startup to the big, News Corp. You go from, startup culture to, big company culture, massive shift. And it's just crazy how much things are different in that kind of environment.
Yeah. I have a small appreciation for that, because I sold my first company to a publicly traded company, and it was, I got a little flavor of, what it's like. It's definitely not the same as a sort of an entrepreneurial, innovative, break things kind of of thing. It's amazing to me that people like Elon Musk, for example, can survive in public companies, and I know it's been tenuous for him from time to time, but voting helps, having all the votes, but it's very, very different. My experience is that it was very, very different in good ways and in good ways too. Like, I learned some stuff that I could apply to the next entrepreneurial, endeavor to make it better.
I think if you compare, it's interesting. You talk about Elon, his companies. I mean, it's his baby, his vision that people are all buying into, and they're driving it still as the one company that's built up this big company, versus, let's say, a News Corp acquiring a small company that had the vision, right? So they're like trying to say, great, we're going to take on this company, and now we have our own set of rules and procedures and red tape. And the guy leading the charge is not necessarily the visionary. They just have a different MO. And oftentimes you find these guys at big companies, all they're caring about is, okay, I just got to worry about my title and what's next. Where am I going to be a year from now? Versus really having the heart and caring about the long-term vision.
Yeah. And it can be easy to get into a situation where on the dating side, like before you're bought, it's like, oh, we just love what you've built, and we want you here, and we want your, your team and your thought processes and all that stuff. And you get in and it's like, what did you say? We don't, all of a sudden we have the best ideas now, and maybe they do. But yeah, that's interesting. So, so that was what was that business called? Was that before Brandetize, right?
Which one are we talking about?
This one where you started working with Brian and you started working with Ed.
Got it. Okay. So I was consulting, and I was consulting with Brian, Ed, and others. And then just and I did that for a while. I was working on various projects, doing some consulting with some venture capitalists and others. And ultimately where the next pivot for my career was, a lot of people came to me and said, hey, what you do for Brian, this is other authors and speakers and experts. They say, hey, what you do for Brian, can you do for me? And I was just like, kind of ignored it, because essentially what was happening is I was hiring and running the digital team behind Brian Tracy. I wasn't touching Brian's books and speaking gigs, but everything online, briantracy.com, I was managing, and I had a team of about 8-9 people that were technically Brian Tracy employees, but I had hired them and I managed everything. So I was like, well, I wasn't really sure how I was going to take another, expert, and the employees are Brian employees. How is that going to make sense? But eventually, after you hear that about 10 times, I'm like, well, wait a second, let me sort of reframe my thinking here. maybe there is an opportunity for me to work for others. And that became essentially the year-long or 2-year-long transition and conversation with Brian Tracy to say, hey, I no longer want to have a monogamous relationship with you anymore. I want to take the staff and work on other people. And that's when Brandetize essentially was born, because what we did is we essentially flipped it on its head, where rather than Brian taking in all the revenue and paying the staff and the rent and all that, I said, Brian, I'll tell you what, especially for him as he was getting older in his career, he didn't need any liabilities. He said, Brian, I'll take over all the employees, all the rents and everything, and I'll pay you a royalty fee after sales. I'll do all the revenue. And then I'm going to want to take on other clients. And really his fear was I would abandon, he never wanted me to abandon him. That's what I ultimately found out for him was, as long as you take care of me and you'll always be there for me. And I said, Brian, you're always my first love. I'll always take care of you. And I've kept that word, to this day. So then with Brandetize was born, where we started working with other thought leaders and speakers. And now we have somebody like, a lot of names like you mentioned, Jack Canfield from Chicken Soup, Phil Town, and a few others, big names. And then it was all about the last, I would say, since that was about 2015. So that was, 6 years ago. Then it was all about, well, what do you want to be when you grow up now that you're running this agency? And then talking to a lot of agency owners, it's kind of the ongoing joke that you don't necessarily go into your entrepreneurial journey to go be an agency owner. You sort of end up backing into it somehow. And so that's how we kind of backed into this world. And then the last 6 years, you're still learning every year. Every year there's something different. What are you going to do this year? What's, first it's the pricing model, the positioning, what types of clients you take on, just on. And I'll pause there for a second.
Well, I like, at the beginning in the bio, we said that your company is helping experts build their empires. And it's kind of, I love a couple of things that I heard there. One, you start working for Brian, you say, hey, this is like a guarantee, right? I'm not going to ask you to pay me a bunch of money for something that doesn't work. But so instead, I'm going to build you something that works. And as it becomes successful, we both become more successful together, right? Yep. And then you start working with him and you say, well, with his team, and you say, hey, there's something bigger here. And it's really like a byproduct of you working with his team on his stuff. You're like, hey, wait a second, there's more that we can do here and still help him. So then you go to him with a proposal that helps him, but helps you as well, right? Because you can actually grow a business instead of just staying there with him. And then as you go down the road, and we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, how, you sort of have determined that getting more niche-y with higher value, results for clients, like helping experts build their empires is, I think it's a way like not only to create a lot more value, but to people like to commoditize things that they think they know about, right? When they say digital agency, they probably think, oh, I know what you do, that kind of thing. And am I on the right track there with your thinking? And
yeah, there's a lot in that. I could share some of the bigger stories I've learned in the last 6 years, and you're talking about almost a full cycle I've been in, and literally even as early as this last month, we've gone in a full circle into niching down, some lessons you learn. Well, first I'll talk a little bit about the pricing model, because you referenced that and some of the growth and learning. I mentioned it earlier. I think it's a great positioning to be able to walk in there and say, hey, I'll do the services, and I'll bet on the back end. I'll do it for performance. And we even mentioned that we do some performance marketing, but let me share what the big learn and win from that is that worked well with Brian. And in hindsight, that worked well with Brian because he already had a proven business and back end, meaning he was already had a name, a brand, and he was already selling. We got ourselves in trouble because we started doing that with others who talked a big game, thought, they certainly had a little bit of momentum, but they were nowhere near where Brian was. And when we went out there and we tried that same model, got us in the door. It certainly could get you in the door almost anywhere.
Right. It's very appealing.
But what would happen is if they didn't have skin in the game, they weren't necessarily moving at your pace, and things would take longer. And also the results weren't necessarily there as fast as you'd hope, as somebody who doesn't have as much of a proven back end that converts, it doesn't have a big of an audience or offers or products that is going to convert. So we learned a lot about that. So, fast forward after lots of mistakes, our newish model is more of a hybrid that says, hey, let's date before we get married. And this is something I certainly would share with others. How can you apply this to your business? And what I mean by that is, let's take a normal relationship. We'll work on a typical retainer. And in fact, Mr. or Mrs. Client, I know that if you don't pay me money, you're not going to take this serious and you're not going to value the work I'm doing. So let's have a normal relationship. But one thing I can tell you is that if we like working together and there's a good, you have to like working with us and we have to like working with you. Let's assume we get past that important obstacle. It gives us a chance to explore the business and establish if you really have something that can scale and you really have a proven, let's call it sales funnel or funnel of growth based on us sending you leads and customers. Once we see that and we know that we can scale this business, we're at that point, let's go ahead and partner up. We can actually, you can get to a point where you can stop paying us. And at that point, we'll take a percentage of what we build together. Because the other thing that we find out is at that point, we can understand the true numbers and the KPIs of the business. When you sit down with a client and say, hey, how do I even negotiate in month one? What percentage of the business we would even take? I don't even understand the numbers other than what they send me on a spreadsheet. And of course, oftentimes clients, a client would never misguide you or lie about their numbers, would they? Of course not. They'd never sort of tell you and embellish their best month ever and say, hey, I'm running $1 million business. When that's they take their best month and multiply by 12 and tell you what their business is and, try to negotiate a deal off of that. That doesn't make sense. Yeah. So it's more about it's almost like a hybrid venture capital. Once we're going to invest our own sweat equity into a client and work on performance, we have to like them and we have to understand the business and the true metrics of the business to be able to take on that risk. But it's still an appealing offer on the front end. So it's kind of a fun way that I could share with you in the audience here of how you can still leverage that offering, but do it in a way that's way smarter and learn from the mistakes that we made along the way, where we would offer that, start with that kind of relationship and never catch up and lose a lot of money in the process.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go through it.
No, I'm saying that's part of the. We'll do it with you offline. Yeah, but that's the model that.
Okay.
That's the model that. Yeah, so that's the model that worked though is to say, hey, we'll do a little bit of upfront, and if it works, then we can go into performance deals. So that's how we sort of stay with the performance, and that was some big learnings we had along the way. The other thing I'll share is we talked about the focus, and I read it from some things you talk about in your great work. You hear about it all the time, and I got to tell you, some of us entrepreneurs are so. Some entrepreneurs like myself and others are just so thick-headed and stubborn when it comes to the magic word of focus. And it's we all intuitively know about it. We all know we need to do it, but our egos get in the way of wanting. The shiny object syndrome is real. We want to do everything. We know we could do everything. It's tough. I got to tell you, as an entrepreneur, it's very hard to want to niche down and focus. And in our world, we went from working with thought leaders to all of a sudden feeling well, let's just go wider. Let's work with all sorts of people, because maybe thought leaders isn't what we want to do. Maybe we want to do other stuff. Maybe it's not as sexy as working with, other types of businesses. And It's not that cool e-com product or something else. So we went wide, and we went very wide, and we went everything. And then we said, well, maybe we eliminate B2B and we go wide and do B2C and try to be a full service agency to all sorts of things. But you keep getting asked what are you best at? What are you good at? Well, we're good at being the whole team and being strategy. And it's just hard for, in hindsight, for people to turn around. And you got to remember, people are out there trying to talk about their friend Eric, who's running this company. And what are they going to say about me? How are they supposed to sell and talk about me if I don't make it really simple and focus on one thing? If somebody asks me, what am I best at? I can barely even answer that myself because I have too big of an answer. It's not the smartest thing. So, we're finally making that decision, which I'm going to, kick myself for to go back to really niche down and just go back full circle into just honing in on experts and doing a lot more with that. So I think it's a painful lesson that I'm going to look back and wish I'd done sooner. We all share that. We share that problem as entrepreneurs.
Of course, it's every journey is about experimentation and shifts. In business, especially. You're shifting all the time, not because you don't think it's the right way to go, because you think it is the right way to go, and the only way to know is if you shift, right? And and move towards it. And then now I like in my book, I call it being selfish. This is what I call being selfish. When you start to really look at, okay, these are all the things we could be doing, but what are the things that are really moving the needle? What are the things where we think we can really go to someone with way more than 100% confidence, if that's even such a thing, that we can help you the way that no one else can help you. And that's going to help us get where we want to get, wherever that is.
Yep.
I have a goofy question for you.
Yeah.
Having worked for so many of these, thought leaders, and you use the word guru, what makes a good guru in your experience?
That's a good question. What makes a good guru? Well, I think ultimately first you got to start with, at the end of the day, does the end customer love what the guru is talking about? Because a guru, likes to hear themselves talk, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What's the end customer feeling? Are they rabid about the content? Are they making a difference? Are they changing lives? Are they making a positive impact? So that to me was what makes a guru is they're making a positive impact. They have their community and tribe that are rabid fans that can't wait to get more, and they want to share what they learned about that person. And there are many of them. There are many of them out there. I mean, and unfortunately, some of them, it's almost like the musician, right? Some of the best talented musicians never get found. There's probably a lot of gurus and experts out there that just don't know how to market themselves and don't know how to get there and get their voice to be heard. And they still may have rabid fans for, the small communities they serve.
Yeah, I'm sure there are thousands of really, really great coaches, really, really great thought leaders who are only known by a small number of people, not because, like you said, not because what they're teaching or what their knowledge is wouldn't be very, very valuable to a lot of other people, but it's because they either don't know how to market or they're uncomfortable with being, perceived as a guru. And guru is sort of, I don't know, sometimes it's like a term of endearment, and sometimes it's kind of pejorative too, I guess, depending on. But you bring up a good point too about people talking. Like sometimes, once you start to get well known, had this guy at a Vistage meeting said, he had this thing called wait. You use that ta or whatever it was. He had this thing called wait, which stood for why am I talking? That should be a question you're asking yourself all the time. Like, why am I talking? And sometimes I think there's a lot of people out there who can't answer that question. They just go, they just go. Sorry, I cut you off. What were you going to say?
No, shoot, I was going to talk about, I think I forgot, but I'll catch up on that one.
Okay.
I do remember. I think you asked the other part of the question you asked was what else, what makes a good guru? I think the other thing is also knowing, I learned a lot about, and I'm sure where, the term, the genius matrix, where you really understand what your area of excellence is. And I think if a guru could stay in their lane and then bring people around them that can serve the other areas. And a good guru, I think, is the person that is just, they just love talking about and writing about and speaking about that thing that they're great in, and doesn't mean they're going to be great in other areas, meaning oftentimes they don't make great operators in their businesses. They don't make great entrepreneurs in some ways because they just constantly want to, change things around and sometimes they don't make they're not great marketers and stuff. Yep. So I think them staying in their lane. And so that's where, for us, what's worked well is when okay, they're doing their thing, we're doing our thing. And we just sort of get out of each other's way and say, great, you do your magic. And I just need as much content from you all day long. Get in front of a camera, that's your genius. Just please go do that and let us handle everything else. So that's kind of what also is helpful.
Okay. Let me shift gears if you don't mind. I want to talk about two things. One, I want to talk about, first, I want to ask you about the horse syndicate. And I want to understand why you're doing that and what you like about it or what you love about it. Tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, growing up with my dad, I just remember he used to take me to the racetrack I'm in California. So back in the day, I grew up in LA, even though I'm in San Diego now. And I went to Santa Anita. I think it was even Hollywood Park back in the day. That's no longer there. We just go to the races. And I always thought it was so cool, these race horses. And one day I was on a vacation with a big group of people. And one of the guys I was talking to was from Kentucky, and he's a horse, equestrian lawyer, and he was into horses. And he was talking about, how they have a horse. I'm like, God, how do you get a horse? It seems like so out of reach for me. Like, you just think it's, super expensive, these beautiful horses. He's like, well, you just get a syndicate and there's all sorts of horses. And, I'm like, well, how much does that cost? He's like, well, depending on the people, 5, 10 grand. I'm like, what? I'm like, I could be a horse owner for like 5 to 10 grand. I'm like, count me, I'm in. And so that led to, really, I kind of was an inspiration with him as well, where we built out this syndicate in San Diego, and now we're partnering with guys out of Kentucky and all over the place. And now we're a part of a group of people that just, each year you pony up some money and you get horses, and it's been a blast going to the races, and it's good for networking and it's entertainment, and in my one tip, if you will, I'll just add to that story. What I learned through that from an investor point of view is, you go into horse racing, realizing a lot of it's entertainment and business and all that. And sure, you could win some money, but really where the success has been in that investment in the horse racing world is, I like to say, is if they're going to do it, try to find a syndicate that's getting bigger horses that are more expensive, because it's very hard to win money in the horse racing world when you're buying $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 horses than when you're taking a smaller piece of a 6-figure horse.
Okay.
And from a business perspective, you could easily translate it to the COGS, the cost of goods to manage a horse is more or less the same, whether you're managing a $10,000 horse or $1 million horse. Hay is hay is hay. I was like to say, so you might as well have a horse that's not going to be as expensive has a chance of winning money more frequently and bigger purses of money. So it's been a fun ride, a fun experience.
And is it a bet on the back end as well, on the stud part of it, or is it just on the racing?
It's all different criteria. So like some people will, like our group tends to get female horses that if they get what's called a stakes win in the racing world, it's a black type stakes win, then the value of that horse goes up, because when they go to breed, you could say you have a stakes horse, a female that's going to breed, so there's that sort of as part of our strategy from our group. So, but there's different groups have different strategies. So it all just depends. I mean, the key is to just try to, you want to get a horse that hopefully gets some stakes wins behind them, and that increases their value. In addition, of course, to the purses that they win every time at the races.
I gotta talk to my friend about that. He's big into horses, but I don't know that they used to have a lot of horses, but I don't know if he's acquainted with this horse syndicate thing. That sounds like a good idea. I'm in a number of investing syndicates, like early stage syndicates too. And it's sort of the same thing. But it's a great way to not write a huge check or take a huge risk on, one horse or one company or something, but be involved and support entrepreneurs. And that's the second thing I wanted to ask you, because you're also an investor in a number of companies, and including some restaurants, which that kind of interests me, because I've never invested in a restaurant, and everyone says to be, run away from investing in restaurants. So how did you decide? Because a lot of times too, people in your, that you don't start investing in these things until after you sell a company, or, how did you decide to get into the investing you're into?
So the horses in restaurants, I'd say, is more the entertainment side of things. And it wasn't like, hey, I'm going to do a 10X on these deals. I'll kind of, my investment strategy, and I'm not saying it's the smartest or the best one out there. It's one that works for me because I know what I'm getting into, and a lot of it's just for entertainment. The restaurant side, admittedly, the two biggest things I've learned from that is, when you're not controlling your own business, it's very scary. So for me, my strategy with restaurants is to invest the least amount possible to have skin in the game and enjoy the benefits of being a restaurant owner. So the reality is, I'm not sitting there putting in 25, 30%, of a restaurant. It's like I'm writing a small check just to have skin in the game and to have fun with it. It's entertainment. It was certainly more exciting in my single days. To being able to have a piece of a restaurant, and being able to get the benefits, getting discounts, getting comp meals, bringing clients there is really good for business. And so that's part of why, as far as investment strategy on that, funny enough, it's the same fundamentals of almost any other business. The number one thing you want to look for is management. Who's really buying this company? What's their success rate with other restaurants? And of course, in the restaurant industry, location too. But, if you get the right location, the right management, it definitely has a good chance of being successful. And that's been, probably the 10, 15 or so investments I've made in that space. It's almost every time that's when I've won and when I've lost has been based on that.
Okay. And what about some of the other, you mentioned, or I mentioned FanDuel and some others?
Yeah, I think similar. A lot of it's just through, and I think similar to you, there's so much deal flow that comes all over the place. And I happen to be love networking. I'm connected to so many people. People know I'm connected to others. So I see a lot of stuff. I need to arm myself with people that are better at saying no than I am, because I suck at it. And everything looks exciting to me. So fortunately, I've learned that hard lesson along the way.
Yeah, me too.
So I think again, it's the same model. I mean, those that are successful have been the ones that had really great leaders behind it. I've had a few, and for me, I don't have the ability to go put huge checks. So I've had fun writing smaller checks, just to 10, 15, 20, $25,000 checks to get in on some companies. And, hopefully over the time, I'll be able to increase that number with some more wins and more money in the bank. I could try taking on riskier investments, but I've had a couple of nice really hits on some of those. The FanDuel one you referred to was actually pre-FanDuel. Was a company called Alpha Draft, I believe. It was somebody who got acquired by FanDuel, and that was one of those you thought it was a done, and you wrote off I think it was like a $10,000 check I wrote, but it was like an acquisition upon an acquisition upon an acquisition by a public company, and let's just say that 10,000 turned into a really nice return beyond I could ever imagine. But it's stuff like that makes those fun, and it certainly pays for some of the less fortunate ones, but I've been blessed, and then I've had a few big returns on a few of these smaller ones. So I've been able to hang in there. And a lot of it, again, has been based on, I've gotten to know the entrepreneurs pretty well. And I feel like those that have a good success record are the ones I keep betting on.
Well, I love entrepreneurs that are helping other entrepreneurs, that are supporting them. It doesn't matter the check size. It just matters that you're helping them, bring their ideas and bring their businesses to life. And sometimes it pays off big, and sometimes you lose it all, but it's still, I just feel like that's something we should all be doing. All entrepreneurs should be doing that. Yeah. Putting the money you've made as an entrepreneur, at least a portion of it, into the hands of other entrepreneurs and giving them a chance to run with it and support them. Yeah. And one fun thing I've done, and I can share this as well, and I talk to people, and I'm surprised some people don't realize this, I'm sure I know you do probably, is that, even if you get an opportunity, you've been successful as an entrepreneur, it's fun to write a small check and then also get advisory shares as well. And that's easier to get than, easier to ask for than you might imagine. All entrepreneurs, especially young ones, they love having people that have gone through the battle. And it's a fun way, especially when you're willing to write a small check, because it shows you're serious and you like the business, and then you have some skin in the game. But then you can almost like double or triple your investment by putting in a little bit of time. And that's another way for entrepreneurs, as you said, to help others, and by giving a little bit of time and your knowledge. And also, certainly, it's nice to get paid for it in stock, and one day that can turn into a nice win as well. I've never done that. I've never asked. That's a good idea. It's worth an ask. There you go. Yeah. Look at that. This guy's bringing value, value. Thank you. Yeah. Well, Eric, this has been a ton of fun. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I've enjoyed learning more about you and everything you're doing. This helping experts build their empires is really exciting to me, and should be to many people. How do people, I mentioned some ways to get a hold of you. Is there other ways you want people to reach out? The best is just, our website, Brandetize, which is a combination of brand and monetize. So brandetize.com. And there's a contact, and you can always just mention my name in there and they'll find me, and I think the other ways you mentioned as well. So I'm happy to share and be able to assist. And if somebody just wants to run an idea by me, anybody that's your fan is my fan. So I'm happy to help any way I can. Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.